G'day guys and gal. It's no secret that the setting of 40k isn't exactly a tolerant one. Even the Tau Empire, the most Star Trek-esque inclusive faction, has an entire chunk of its military that are obsessed with genociding the non-Tau members of the Empire. The Primarchs killed a shizen load of alien civilizations, driving hundreds if not thousands of them into extinction. Many of them deserve that fate as they were malicious predatory things, but many others did not. Whilst all Primarchs killed their fair share, some were much more ruthless about it, whilst others actively engaged in diplomacy with the Xenos, hoping to avoid violent bloodshed. It's interesting to see the diverse opinions of the Primarchs in handling the non-human residents of the galaxy. Before we get started, keeping yourself groomed is important, guys. From your scalp to your balls, you need to be keeping things tidy. After all, male grooming and manscaping is considered to be one of the most essential things women are looking for in a partner. So I'm very happy to once again partner with Manscaped today to bring you the most convenient, easy to use grooming tools with none of the rashes, nips, or other grim fates that male grooming can often bring about. Their latest product, and my new personal favorite, is the Handyman. It's an extremely portable, easy to use shaver that gives you that close crop cut on either your neck or your face without having to use a razor or other rash inducing devices. It doesn't even need shaving cream. I'm currently in Europe, and one of the main things I brought with me was the Handyman for upstairs, with the Lawnmower 4.0 being for downstairs, meaning I can stay just as fresh on holidays than I can at home. Alongside the Handyman, Manscaped also offers the Plow 2.0 for when you want that razor sharp clean cut, various washes and deodorants to keep you smelling your best, and more. Available individually or in various value bundles. The best part is that by using my link and code Majorkill, you get 20% off any and all Manscaped products as well as free international shipping. Cheers to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. Today we'll go over what each Primarch thought of the different Xenos, especially the ones they could engage in diplomacy with, drawing examples from the lore in doing so. Let's get into it. Starting with the Lion, because the Lord of the First is always first. The Lion was incredibly duty-bound. He didn't get a hard-on from genociding Xenos, but he also didn't hesitate if that's what he needed to do. In saying that, the Lion was very rarely used against diplomatic Xeno races. Instead, he fought the Crave, a horrific psychic Xeno race of mind-controlling parasites that have existed since the dawn of the galaxy, or the Rungdung, a Xeno empire so powerful it almost broke the Imperium. So for him, there was no issue with those exterminations. The Lion also happily engaged with and hung out with the Watchers in the Dark, a Xeno race themselves, whilst he has reflected in the current setting that maybe mankind's xenocidal tendencies were a mistake and that they should have sought to cooperate more to avoid their current shitty predicament with the galaxy having its asshole torn open. The second Primarch's opinion on Xenos is worth just as much as a TikTok account with 1 million followers. Fucking nothing. Fulgrim was an interesting one. As a non-corrupted Chad, he did what he needed to do, but definitely wasn't xenocidal. In saying that, he did attack the Leia with extreme prejudice, despite the Imperium being open to incorporating them as a Xeno vassal due to their world's impressive technologies. When the Leia Blade begun corrupting him, he still didn't become this mega Xeno hater. When he discovered some Eldar maiden worlds, he declared them so beautiful that the Imperium would not claim them. He even engaged in initially peaceful diplomacy with the Eldar who arrived on the planet, including Eldrad. However, when Eldrad discovered Fulgrim was corrupted, the meeting turned sour. The two sides fought, and then Fulgrim virus bombed the maiden world out of spite. So I wouldn't exactly say he was a particularly tolerant guy, but he did have some serious issues, and there are other Primarchs who hate Xenos way more than he did. We don't get to see much in the way of Perturabo's opinion of Xenos, but I can't imagine it would have been particularly strong either way. Olympia was a human world without Xeno raiders or Xeno taint, so he wouldn't have held a personal grudge. In the similar vein to the Lion, Perty was sent against the most deadly and powerful hostile human or Xeno worlds, so any Xeno civilization he genocided would have had it coming. He was happy enough to put up with an Eldar guide during the events of Angel Exterminatus. However, as soon as he realized the Eldar guide didn't actually know what the fuck he was doing, he broke its neck, but more so because he was useless rather than because he was an Eldar, which is an example that sums up Perty quite nicely. Jaghatai loves killing orcs. He fucking loves it. Jaghatai was so good at killing orcs that orcs actually stopped enjoying fighting him. Probably something to do with Jaghatai needing to blow off some steam, knowing that he was being a hypocrite for serving the Emperor, a man who went against everything Jaghatai believed in, but who he couldn't disagree with, otherwise he would get squashed. Jaghatai was last seen entering the Webway, chasing some Dark Eldar, so there's every chance that he's spent the last 10,000 years having orgies and racing jet bikes, likely improving his opinion of Xenos. More than likely, he is currently Sir Gorach's prisoner, which would have the opposite effect. Russ and Xenos are not a pleasant combo. Russ was known to be extremely vicious and more than happy to exterminate any and all aliens who crossed his path. After all, you should see the shit he did to human worlds. Fortunately for diplomatic Xenos, Russ was often sent after the juiciest, most hostile meat. So while he definitely genocided a Xeno culture here and there that he probably didn't have to, most of his wrath was directed towards Xenos that deserved it. I did read somewhere that Russ and his legion destroyed a craft world. However, I don't know for certain if that is true, but it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. Rogal Dorn was a straightforward, pragmatic man. He would always analyze situations before engaging in them. Whilst these walls and guns would have destroyed a shitload of Xenos during the Great Crusade, he didn't really come across as a xenocidal maniac. As much as he would be loath to admit it, Dorn would have a very similar attitude to Perturabo. All hostile Xenos were to be destroyed, non-hostile Xenos were to be contained, analysed and potentially spared, or maybe genocided. Bit of a coin flip sometimes. The Night Lords were sadistic enough when it came to human civilization, so imagine how bad they were to Xenos. Night Lords would torture and genocide any Xeno civilization they encountered, hostile or not. When a joint campaign of the Night Lords and Salamanders against the human and Eldar world took place, various Eldar were captured. However, they escaped, maybe via the Night Lords releasing them, prompting the Night Lords to open fire on the Eldar who were running through a human crowd. Mass reactive explosive shells fired into a crowd by sadistic super soldiers is not a fun time for anyone. Hence a shitload of people died, as did the Eldar, which pretty much summarizes the Night Lord's view on Xenos. Sanguinius had a pretty level-headed approach to Xenos. He actively wished Xenos and humanity could coexist peacefully, but he wasn't naive about it. Sanguinius was involved in the purging of numerous hyper-hostile aliens, a purging he did with extreme prejudice. The mega arachnids on Murder, the mind-controlling Nephilim, Sangi was happy to deliver them the Nick Cage slap of God. However, he was also just as happy to talk with non-hostile Xenos. He engaged with diplomacy with the Interrex alongside Horus, a human Xeno civilization. Even the Silent King claims that he and Sanguinius were friends, although he could have been lying about that. Overall, chat to the friendlies, kill the meanies was his policy, and a pretty good one at that. On the flip side, Ferrus did not want a bar of any Xeno. He would kill any and all Xenos he encountered. When the Elder tried to warn him of the heresy, he was basically too stubborn to listen and tried to kill them. When his fleet encountered the Diasporax, a fleet-based culture of humans and aliens living together, he basically said to the humans, either kill your Xeno comrades or we will kill you all. Despite how diplomatic the Diasporax were and their many attempts to get Ferrus to fuck off. Probably the least shocking opinion on this list. Even a 4-year-old dropped on their head would know that Ferrus was xenophobic as fuck. The 11th Primarch probably liked Xenos too much, hence why he is now dead and deleted from the setting. Angron was a similar vibe to Ferrus. Kill first and don't ask questions ever. The first thing he experienced in life was getting attacked by an Eldar kill team, so that wouldn't have helped with his opinion of them. In saying that, Angron was known to kill everyone and everything, so maybe he didn't hold any prejudice towards them, he just frothed killing all the time. Guilliman's opinion on Xenos has evolved over time. It was pretty close to what Sanguinius thought, but a bit harsher. He was happy to accept Xeno client states, but they had to be very much on the side of completely harmless / kind of useful. In saying that, Guilliman's adaptability meant that his opinion of Xenos has improved over time. He used the Pharos device, a Xeno artifact, during the heresy, and upon waking up from his 10,000-year nap, was an ally of the Inari and actively worked to cease hostilities between the Imperium and the Eldar. Guilliman would go on to reflect that perhaps mankind should have been more tolerant of Xeno empires, as if they had worked together instead of fought, then maybe the real issues, like chaos, could have been beaten. In saying that, he wouldn't blink to kill a Necron, Tyrannid, Orc, or Dark Eldar, which is totally understandable. The Death Guard didn't have any issues with massacring Xeno empires or cultures, regardless of their hostility status. They weren't exactly known as the most compassionate or diplomatic of legions. Mortarion's adoptive father also appeared to be some kind of necromantic Xeno overlord. With Morty hating the shit out of his father, I can imagine that prejudice would have stayed with him. After all, he hated Psychers because of his father, so he probably would have hated Xenos as well. Morty also faced off against some pretty gnarly Xenos, including an enslaver at different times during the heresy, so I can comfortably say he wasn't a big fan. On the flip side, Magnus was actually considered to be the most tolerant and accepting of Xenos out of all the Primarchs, even including Sanguinius. He believed that all life had value and that there was always knowledge to gain. As such, Magnus never fired first, always seeking diplomacy so that knowledge could be shared. He would even try to become initially hostile Xenos. This only really extended to sentient races though. Vicious alien fauna were fair game when it came to cum blasting them with psychic energy. It's stuff like this that makes Magnus's fall the saddest. Dude was a kind, caring, and compassionate man who just wanted to do the right thing. His home of Prospero was an absolute paradise, and if the Imperium had adopted his policy towards Xenos, then more than likely the setting would be a lot less fucked. Now for Horus. Despite being War Master, Horus was actually very open to Xeno diplomacy. He started off a bit more vicious, but as time went on, he felt as if the Emperor's harsh anti-Xeno policies were flawed. When he encountered the Interrex, a culture of humans living alongside Xenos, he was incredibly respectful and worked hard to establish diplomatic relations. Unfortunately, Erebus ruined it by stealing a special knife from the Interrex, which caused them to think that Horus and his warriors were agents of chaos. Thus, a war broke out between the two factions. Horus was really upset about the breakdown of diplomacy, and often reflected on what he could have done different. However, as soon as Horus was corrupted, he stopped giving a fuck about Xenos as he purely focused on the war against his father. Also, his track record prior to the Interrex isn't great, with him once attacking a Xeno world that was so anti-war that they gathered in colosseums to fight their wars gladiator style, awaiting the Lunar Wolves to come down and fight them with honor in the arena. Horus simply said "Lamau" and orbitally bombed the colosseums. Lorgar also had an interesting view on Xenos. When he encountered the Elder, Lorgar spent quite a bit of time communicating with them, learning their language and culture. However, due to his own fanaticism as well as the Elder being rude to him, the relations broke down and he ended up destroying a minor craft world. Later on, he would go on to write extremely anti-Xeno shit in his Book of Lorgar, advocating for the annihilation of everything that wasn't a human, so that took a pretty gnarly turn for the worst. Vulkan definitely started off pretty anti-Xeno. His homeworld was regularly raided by Dark Elder, so that was his first experience with them. On Caldera, when the Night Lords and Salamanders fought against an Elder human world, he was initially pretty merciful. However, when the Night Lords fired upon the escaping Elder, one of his human friends was hit and killed. In a fit of rage, Vulkan incinerated an Elder child who had surrendered to him. Vulkan would go on to regret this, however, and vowed not to barbecue children anymore. He would go on to work with Eldrad in order to get back to Terra and help with the siege, so he definitely ended up with a positive attitude change. We don't really get to see much Corvus on Xeno action, but he will probably deal with it how he deals with everything else. Brooding, cranky, and then maybe cutting their head off. Corvus was a part of a very specialized legion, not the one they would call to engage in diplomacy with a bunch of aliens. So whilst I don't imagine him being overly xenocidal, I don't think he would be that friendly. Alpharius Omegon were very open-minded to things, probably too open-minded to be honest, as not only did they happily meet with the Cabal, an organization of Super Xenos, but Alpharius totally believed the Cabal's vision and then betrayed the Emperor in order to try fulfill a prophecy that would see mankind extinct and Xenos rise to reclaim the galaxy. Not something you'd do if you hated Xenos. In saying that though, the brothers didn't respect Xenos, ditching their Cabal representative and initially holding the Cabal at gunpoint during their first meeting. Just like everything to Alpharius, Xenos are a tool to be used and then disposed of when their use has ended. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then Patreon is the place to be, where we have much more tolerance for Xenos in both nude cosplay and artwork form. Hit the subscribe button and hit the real subscribe button for more Xeno love and content. Join the Discord for more memes and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.